Story 1. My second job ever was at an air compressor factory. My job was using a hydraulic press to press fit a bearing into a cast aluminum housing. If you kept your foot on the pedal too long, it had enough force to crack the housing and explode the bearing. The press was wide open with no safety barriers, and you held the housing with your hands while the press operated. On my first day, I saw several people smoking methamphetamine or crack cocaine during break and a group of 5 or 6 people get into a brawl. I left on my lunch break and never returned. Story 2. I had been working for a company as a help desk technician for a few years. I got some certifications and was looking to progress my career, so I told my boss that I wanted to do the job I was studying for. She was excited to hear I passed my certification and was happy to promote me, as the previous network administrator was preparing to retire. While I was acclimating to the role, we got hit with a catastrophic ransomware attack. It was not my fault, but absolutely my problem because I was the only one with any technical skills beyond the help desk. That was a long and tiring engagement, but at least I know what it's like to work 100 hours in a week. Story 3. When I was 13, I went on an outdoor skills program called the National Outdoor Leadership School. My friend's brother went, so my friend and I wanted to go. It was a month of backpacking in Wyoming. It sounded fun. The course was for 14 to 16-year-olds, but I was almost 14, so with some letters saying I could handle it, I was good. We got there. Most of the other kids were 16. The gear up starts. They hand you a frame pack, tarp, and plastic bag to line the pack. Then they start handing you a long rope, sling, ice axe, stove, fuel bottle, fly rod, Franken sweaters with the V-neck sewn up with more fabric, and an extra 6 inches added to the bottom of other fabrics, so it looked like 3 sweaters, boot gaiters, ground pad, small shovel, sleeping bag, etc. Full leather boots to smear with grease. Then you start bagging and dividing up food, 10-pound blocks of cheese, powdered milk, grape nuts, on and on. You lay out your gear, and they show you the best way to pack it and put it on. At that age, I weighed about 130 pounds. My pack and gear with food weighed 45 to 55 pounds. We load up and drive 5 hours out into the mountains where the truck drops us off, and they're like, "See you in a week when we drop off more food." The first day we set up a Tyrolean rope system to cross a river. Takes hours. Then we load up the packs and start hiking. At altitude, your body is not used to the pack, the weight, the altitude, the boots are too new. Everything is a pain: eating, bathing, snow melt, popping, sleeping, orienteering, getting water, policing the campsite. We're warned not to leave any trash, or we'll have to hike back to get it. My friend and I are trudging up the mountain, body aching, pack swaying, and it felt like a week, but it was day 1 of 28. That was my, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into moment. My friend is like, "What are we doing here?" I wanted to leave with a ration truck so badly. Many kids, including my friend, did. But as your body adjusts and your skills become second nature, soon you begin to notice. It's spectacularly beautiful here. I don't think another person has ever camped here. I don't think I've had snow on July 4th before. I won't say it ever got easy, but I'm glad I stuck it out. It built a lot of character and gave me a sense everyday things were easy. To this day, car camping seems so luxurious. At the National Outdoor Leadership School, we didn't use tents, just tarps. And no showers, we bathed in snowmelt streams. And that was the way it was, and we liked it. Too long. Didn't read Backpacking in Wyoming at 13, big pack, real gear, real mountains. Story 4. Was at a festival and Robert Randolph was offering for someone to play guitar with him. I don't know how he waved me up, but as I am being escorted up by security, the reality of not knowing how to play guitar hits. This was probably the longest 30 seconds of walking in my life, as I was about to be in front of a few thousand people. I get on stage to some cheers. He places a guitar on me and says, "We're in G. You know what you're doing?" All I can muster is the truth that I know bass, so he quickly pulls the guitar off and finds someone else. Got to watch the rest of the set from backstage, and Mr. Randolph laughed about it after and thanked me for being honest. Apparently, people have not been forthcoming and made bigger fools of themselves than I did. Story 5. Went to a fetish meet because a former partner was super active in the scene and I had befriended a few people adjacent to, or very much involved in, that scene. At the venue, An older couple, friendly strangers who I had barely talked to, asked if they could tie me up and then beat me. Verbatim, that's what they asked. I suddenly decided I was massively vanilla and not up for any of that, so I politely declined. They were perfectly fine with it and actually apologized for coming on too strong. But then an insanely attractive lady at the same gathering wanted to do basically the same thing, and I let her. So, I guess I thought, what the heck did I just get myself into negatively, followed by what the heck did I just get myself into positively in the space of a few hours. Story 6. I was 16 with my 16-year-old friends, thinking we were cool and invincible. We were drinking and my friends wore really short skirts. We were hanging out with slightly older bad boys. They took us to a rough part of town to a house party with adult men. Not long after arriving, they put an adult film on the main big screen TV and tried to talk about the scenes with my friends and me. I never exited a situation so fast in my life. Story 7. Long story short, I met some guys at a bar. They invited me to an after party because their friend had some ketamine and asked if I wanted to join them. I thought, never tried it but always wanted to, why not? They seemed nice. So I went with them. I stepped into a really filthy apartment, which was the first red flag. We did a big line of ketamine each and rolled up a joint. The first thing that happened is they asked me to beat the final boss of Elden Ring for them. So I said, hell yeah, hand me that controller. And I beat it. They were overjoyed. We played music for the next hour on YouTube, with music videos running on the TV. We're all metal fans, so it was a mix of metalcore and black metal. I'm sitting there totally faded, thinking, man, I really don't know these guys. Maybe this was stupid. As I do, I look at the TV, and it's like black and white footage of piles of dead bodies and starving people. It struck me like a brick to the face. This is footage from Auschwitz. I turned to the guy next to me, and he said, 1488. He saw the recognition in my eyes, smiled, and said, guys, he's one of us. That's when I realized they were neo-Nazis. Luckily, I have an Aryan appearance, so I kept my mouth shut about the fact that I'm a leftist. At this point, I was so faded I had trouble walking and was in no condition to go home. I had no idea where I was, how to get home, and my phone was out of battery. So I had to spend the next 2 hours with these guys, pretending to be racist until I got sober enough to leave. I made up an excuse to leave at around 5 a.m. and had to walk in a random direction until I recognized where I was. Took another hour to walk home. Too long. Didn't read. Took ketamine with strangers in their apartment. They started playing footage from the Holocaust on the TV. Turns out they were neo-Nazis. Dumbest thing I've ever done. Story 8. Had my 18th birthday lying on the top bunk of United States Naval Boot Camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. Lying in the dark in the middle of the night 2 weeks in, wondering that very thing. Story 9. One night after bartending close to 3 in the morning, my girlfriend called me to pick her up from our friend's house. I drove over there, told her I didn't want to come in, and that I just wanted to pick her up, get back home, and go to bed. Arriving at the house, they waved me in to come inside. I wasn't in the mood but went in anyway. I was the only guy and was just making small talk when the woman who owned the house came out with a plate with a bunch of lines on it. They started passing it around, and it got to me. I just took the plate and passed it to the next person. Our friend flipped out, started yelling and ranting about how I was being disrespectful. And then out of nowhere, she pulled a little snub-nosed pistol out and pointed it right in my face. In my mind, I was freaking out, and I remember saying something along the lines of, okay, I'll do a line. Just put the gun down. I'm sorry. I did a line, stood up, walked straight out the door, got in my car and left. Never hung out with any of them after that. Story 10. Oh, I definitely have one of these. I was sitting in the Mormon temple during my first endowment ceremony. I had been born and raised in the church, but the temple endowment is something else entirely, and I was not prepared for how different and weird it was. I was sitting on one side of the room with the women, while my husband was on the other side with the men. They were telling us to chant certain things, and we had to put on these weird green robes and a veil over our white clothes. My husband had some sort of baker's hat. I remember looking across the room at him wearing that dumb hat and thinking, What have I done? I was so embarrassed. We were supposed to be chanting and learning hand signals and handshakes, and my brain was like, I'm in a cult. This is a cult. How did this happen? Story 11. When you just start Army basic training after you finish in processing, you hop on a bus to meet your drill sergeants who will be there for your stay. This is called shark attack. You hop off the bus with duffel bags only to be met with men and women in these funny little hats, also called campaign hats, screaming at me, telling me to hurry up and asking why I am going so slow. That made me think, why did I do this to myself? Story 12. I started college on a Navy Reserve Officers Training Corps scholarship. During orientation week, we had to do a very mini boot camp, so I missed orientation and meeting people. The school was a big agricultural school, nowhere near a naval base. We had to report at 4 or 4:30 a.m. in uniform and run around in circles in the parking lot of the Reserve Officers Training Corps building. Every other lap or so, an upperclassman would order you to climb into the dumpster, face the chicken coops, and yell, "Wake up, you commie chickens." When they decided that you were done with that, you were ordered to climb out and then berated for the condition of your uniform. It was then that I decided to pay for my own education. Story 13. About 10 years ago, my then boyfriend and I had moved to a new town for college. We wanted to make friends, and we were social stoners, so we hung out with a mutual friend of our dealer. About 30 minutes into hanging out and smoking, my phone rang. At that time, I had a setting to have the flash go off while it rang, in case I ever lost it while on silent mode. This guy became paranoid immediately, thinking I was recording him and going to blackmail him for smoking weed. I explained the setting on my phone and was willing to show him I had no photos or videos of him on my device. My boyfriend and one other friend with us backed me up. This guy lost his absolute mind, walked out of my buddy's house screaming obscenities as he left in 5-degree weather. We were his ride. To this day, we have no idea what happened to him or how he got home. We blocked him later that evening. Never saw him again, fortunately. From then on, we were fine with no new friends. Story 14. This happened a few years ago. I started a new swing shift full-time job. I made it clear to the interviewer and manager that I could only work 40 hours a week, 5 8-hour shifts from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. I was also going to school full-time, taking 22 credit hours a semester. The first night on the job, my lead walked up to me and said, "We have a big order to finish. Can you stay till 1 a.m.? I immediately stopped what I was doing, found the manager who hired me, and restated what I made very clear in the interview. He then told me that if I wanted to keep my job, I'd need to put in at least a few extra hours a week. Desperate to make money and pay bills, I stayed at that place for almost 3 years. During the winter months, the busy season, I was working 12 to 15-hour nights, then going to school during the day. The most frustrating part is during the summer, the slow season, they would call off swing and night shifts, telling us there wasn't enough work and to stay home. I had enough of this after I wasn't allowed to leave work one night when I was overly stressed and started to feel lightheaded. My arm was going numb, and when I looked in the bathroom mirror, I couldn't move half my face. I went to the manager that night and said I thought I was having a stroke, and they told me to keep working and I couldn't go home. I was 25 at the time. Story 15. I was at a mall and ran into an old high school classmate. He shook my hand and asked me to join him and his friends for a meal at McDonald's. While we ate, he started talking about how Jesus Christ saved him and showed him the way, and all the usual stuff you would expect. He was a completely different person than how I remembered him from 10 years prior. Anyway, as we were exiting the mall, he asked me if I could pray with them. I didn't want to be rude, so I agreed. As we left the mall, we formed a circle and they started praying out loud, including for me. This was in the middle of the day, at the busiest place of the 100,000-person city. I just remember thinking to myself, is this real? Anyway, he spent the next few weeks trying to convince me to join him at their religious gatherings, but I refused. Story 16. I, 30-year-old male, had sexual relations with a transgender woman once, male to female. Just a one-time thing. No big deal. During our time together, she acknowledged that many of her partners would fetishize her, whereas I was largely indifferent. But as she was leaving after the actual hookup, she looked at me and said, we had sex. Me? Yeah. Her. That makes you a faggot. She left immediately after, and I was so confused. Needless to say, I did not contact that person again. Story 17. Long story short, someone asked me to be a volunteer firefighter. Since it was all free training and a little extra income, I figured sure, why not? How hard can it be? I went through the academy and got all my certificates. 2 weeks later, we had our first big call. A 3-story apartment building with the top floor fully engulfed. I get on scene and the chief looks at me and my buddy and says, "You two get that hose line and get upstairs. You are fire attack 1." I just stood there and looked at him, then at the raging inferno, then him again thinking, are you crazy? You want us to go where? Can't you see it's on fire? My buddy grabs me and the line, and we head upstairs. We entered the main hall, and it looked like a scene from a movie. Fire rolling over our heads, the entire length of the hallway. All I thought was, what the heck did I sign up for? We were up there for about 5 minutes. Felt like an hour, before command started blasting air horns signaling to evacuate. We ended up taking a defensive stand and surrounded and drowned the thing. I stayed on as a volunteer for the next 7 years before I moved on. Good times.